Welcome everyone to this episode. I'm Emiliano Vittoriosi, founder of Berlin Explorer project, and I'm here today to talk about 10 and more podcasts in a way changed my life, but also grew something inside of me. I learned a lot from this podcast, and I started in 2021 just for fun to make podcasts. Actually, I did over 170 podcasts, and I met a lot of people, a lot of different perspectives, a lot of different experiences. So through these 10 and more podcasts, I'm sure you can learn a lot about photography, not only. There are humanities conversations that are full of experiences. So during this video, I will talk about many photographers, and after some words, I will show you a sneaky peek part of the podcast that you can find in any case on YouTube here or Spotify and other platforms. So let's start with the first podcast I have today, and one of the podcasts recently I did it was with Willie Schumann, and Willie is a really wise person. I like it a lot, and he's full of experience. His portfolio is full of images, and he's kind of a really overproductive person, especially because he shoots a lot in analog. As you can listen from the podcast, we talk a lot about analog photography and his way to research in photography, especially writing about holography as articles, pictures, and many experiences. I love it to doing the podcast with him.
You know, I started really late. I don't know when I started with Instagram, maybe 10 years ago, because I was on lomography, and I thought, and that's so funny because lomography was around as a web page to upload pictures before Flickr even.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting. As much as they are analog, they're very digital. It's fascinating that they realized that really early, this need of connecting with people. And this community of lomography, honestly, it's very rewarding, very interesting people. They have changed over time, but I can honestly say some of my best friends are lomographers around the world. And because this world of, getting films, developing them, taking pictures, different cameras, it's a specific world nowadays. And it's great to exchange with these people who mostly have really interesting jobs also and very creative. I think to be a lomographer is rather a mindset also, doesn't depend really on the camera you're using and the films. It's really like an approach to the world.
Another podcast I liked a lot was with Spiros Strogilis, that is a photographer Greek. I love him way to capture the street. I will say that for me it's not only a street photography, but he's a designer of the street. He captured the life around as a certain way of not only include the beauty, but also to capture the detail in a way to even better research inside. His approach with photography, I think, is really interesting and deserve, in a way or another, certain way of attention. When we watch a picture of him, we can feel it, that there is an hyper connection between him and the pictures in front of him. It's something I think it's really incredible, and I like the way he managed the color, especially in photographies.
I'm painting with my camera.
Okay.
If I show you some works I have, painted, it's something like the things I shoot.
Okay.
So for me, it's something like that. That's how I started doing photography, because getting older, I didn't start so old, but growing up, I was too impatient, I had something in my mind, and I was saying, oh, I need 2 days to paint it. Mm-hmm. Well, I prefer to find it in photography,
Okay.
And then I started all this abstract and minimal. In my Instagram, I have very few photographies because I don't like over posting and all this thing with Instagram, 5 pictures a day in your face.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's
And I like to keep some of my work for my website. So when I upload it, if you have seen everything in Instagram, you won't bother to visit the website.
Another podcast I really liked a lot was with the Mochi Robinson. That, in a way or another, we can say is not done yet. We promised each other to doing a second episode, and this second episode, in a way, we will go to record soon. I hope. With Mochi was a kind of so fast impression and feeling to have fun together. I enjoyed really a lot the conversation with him.
I do agree with so much of what you said. I think it's easier for us as humans to relate to music, because like you said, like you don't even need words in it to understand the feeling that's being portrayed. There are songs that we listen to from 80, 70 years ago that our grandparents were listening to, and we have the same feeling that they were having. With that being said, I think there's like added dimensions to photography, because so much of how we view photos is just we're scrolling and we'll see on Instagram something. So I some of the most engaging photos to me are the ones that made me stop.
Another really interesting podcast was made with Augusto Pieroni. Augusto Pieroni, I will say, is a mentor for me in some ways, not directly, because I bought a book of him when I was about 13, 14 years old, and it was incredible for me because he wrote a book, his name Reading Photographies, and most of what I learned in general about photography at the beginning of my career was about a point of view that he suggests inside of the book. I think he's a really wise person, and he wrote not only this book but a series of books really interesting. He's a teacher, and is a person really friendly, I will say, and you can write any kind of conversation with him. I really love the way we did it our podcast, and I hope to have other podcasts with him in the future.
Listen, what I feel urgent now is to say that not the use of images, but the use of photography. So the use of a media that still can convey to some degree some proportion of truth or authenticity. The use of photography has become more than ever a political tool. It is not possible to deny this. It's not possible to play around this. It's not a time that allows us to play in the playground without keeping an eye on.
Another podcast really interesting and funny was with Anton Renz. I remember that he was inside of his car recording the podcast with me, and Anton also has a kind of vision really interesting, as a particular perspective of life, and I liked the approach he put inside of pictures, that he shoot only in the moment that he feel, and there's not a lot of pressure and structure inside of work of him. I like this approach most of the time because I think it's the best way to give effort to your work. Understanding that is only matter of impulsive and instinctive action. Photography, in this case, is writing some kind of communication that we cannot sometimes recognize so fast. So then we capture a picture, and then after years probably we can start to recognize what we was able to say or not able to say at the moment.
È successa una cosa e io ho pensato dentro di me, Madonna, sarebbe fighissimo fotografare questo momento. Ma mentre pensavo questo, mi sono immaginato l'angolo proprio di prospettiva dal quale io avrei, dal quale insomma potevo mettermi a fotografare per avere l'attimo, immortalare quel momento nel migliore dei modi. E facendo tutto questo passaggio nella mia mente, io mi sono chiesto in realtà altre cose sull'argomento di confronto che stavamo, sul quale stavamo dibattendo, e Da lì è partita, diciamo, un'altra prospettiva che piaceva anche insomma a quest'altra persona, e poi dopo ci siamo andati siamo andati a lavorare su questa prospettiva qua. Quindi quello che mi ha regalato la fotografia, sono proprio l'esperienza che mi ha regalato la fotografia è proprio.
Another really interesting podcast I have, unfortunately not in English available, but only in Italian, is with Mario Battaglia. He's a photographer from Apulia, and I think the approach of in photography it's really interesting. I mean, he has a lot of experiences, and it's a really nice person. I like it a lot. We recorded recently a second episode with him, and we talked about also some ways to understand how to ride your own studio, how to ride your business, what are the problem about photography businesses. And what I like about Mario is like this really the approach and the connection. It's totally human. When I have seen him this last time was kind of like we knows each other from years. I liked a lot this lovely connection with this human because you can feel it in a way or another that this person is caring about also what you do, and it's an exchange, and this exchange in a way or another create some kind of trustful way to communicate. That is not something that you always have with everyone, but this was one of the intent inside of this idea to start making podcast.
Di conseguenza l'avere la possibilità di poterlo fare, poter appunto inserire del tuo, già quella credo che sia un massimo per qualcuno che vuole aprire uno studio fotografico e tutto il resto, perché ti permette sempre di esprimerti in un modo o nell'altro.
Sì.
Quindi ritornando al discorso appunto dell'attività,
contratto, eccetera, eccetera.
Come?
Ritornando al discorso contratto, appunto dare valore a se stessi.
Bravo, è sempre questa la cosa importante.
Another really interesting podcast I did, and really deep, that started in a way really provocative, was with Boris Eldagsen, that is not only a photographer but also editor and teacher here in Berlin, and I have met him some weeks ago also, and we had a really long walk, really nice, interesting talk, and I like a lot the way he thinks, the way he perceives the world. I like a lot the way also he relay to the world in general. We talked about some stories about him works in the past, and as a director of photography. And I think his approach in photography is always deeply because he researched this kind of moment as a detailed way to communicate with himself and with our other people. What I think is really particular in his work is the way he can write the kind of emotion, and this emotion can longing during the time. I think his work is not only really interesting, but it's a certain of adventure inside of his emotion, and this is something rarely sometimes in photography, because not many people write the same longing feel for a really big amount of time.
The theory about Berlin that I did like in the past was that it's like a big promise that of course can't be kept for all, but I was often asked what's the difference between Berlin and Melbourne. I was like living 6 years between Australia and Germany, and the Australians asked me what's so special about Berlin. And then I said, in Berlin you could ride nude on your bike, naked without clothes, no helmet, and drink a beer, and it would be okay. And in Australia you would be arrested for each of those three things.
Yeah.
And many times I was saying this, and at some point I was reading an interview with some Australians being in Berlin, and they had been asked the same question. So what's the difference between Australia or Melbourne and Berlin? And they were quoting me. That was so funny, because my explanation became a kind of meme that was passed on as a tool to explain difference, and it has left me. And people used it without knowing that I was the source.
If you wanna have fun, and for me it was really funny, and especially full, I met on Lomography this incredible user of photography, and the photo analog is Per Rapajdi. In art is Koduckgirl, you can find her on Lomography and on Instagram. And Koduckgirl is totally a person that someone will define crazy, but for me is a person full of emotion, full of way to communicate, and I love it to stay there talking with her and completely listen what she was saying to me. During our talk, I was scrolling at the picture, and I was feeling to collect this picture in some ways, and I started to collect the picture, and you can imagine there was thousands of pages of pictures, and I was going on, and I collected a lot of pictures of her because I felt like I wanted to edit a book for her, because it's like to, in some ways, to go inside of the life of someone else and watching every episode of this incredible life that sometimes is just a common life, but reserve a lot of different moments, a lot of different scenes that we are used to don't shoot in general in photography.
I have because digital is free practically to take pictures.
Yeah.
It's like your iPhone, analog, it's expensive, and I spent a little bit of money on the photography and the film and stuff. And I have 20 or something or more cameras. I've been collecting cameras as well. I have but before Lomo 2012, I just had a digital camera, but that was annoying because balance. Digital cameras have this problem where you're always trying to get the color right on the computer. And so you're endlessly trying to work with that. So then in 2012, I got back into analog photography. And now all I do is either analog or I do iPhone.
Another really funny, interesting, and particular story I've heard was with Nika Ilic. Nika Ilic also, I liked a lot to talk with her. I can remember that was evening when we were talking, and I remember an interesting part of the podcast was about the life of herself with the grandfather and grandmother, and this is in a way teached me a lot, because I cannot have actually the experience to live with my grandmother. When I was 10, I remember I was living with my grandmother, and in some ways was really particular the moment of my life. I cannot really remember these moments, but if I will have the possibilities to go back, I will take in some ways a camera to shoot some picture about that moment, because I think living with the people are older than our parents can open many different point of view and can in a way or another make our vision of the life of the world even more wider. I love to talk with her, and I think this experience it's really important to listen.
Yes, I think I'm just due to me discovering this passion rather lately in life, let's say, even though I'm only 23 years old, I always tell that my biggest inspiration comes from movies, because I think it does. I've always been a big movie fan and a movie enthusiast. So when I started doing photography, I was really as passionate about it, but also I have this kind of a perfectionist way of trying to construct a photo. Everything needs to be just assembled like it is in my mind. I need to put it in the photo.
What I loved of doing this podcast in general, it is the point that you can approach to the experiences of other people, you can approach to them point of view, you can approach even more from photographies about documents that you can analyze in some ways, or just listen them and watching that picture as a certain of clip of them vision in them past. I love this about photography, that photography in a way respect some point like memories, but not only. It's a connection with the reality, but sometimes this reality is too far away from us, and then we cannot catch so fast what is the reality of the moment. So in some ways we see the details, and I think is this really similar to have some dreams. When we dream, we don't remember exactly the dream for the longest part of our sleep. We remember just some frame, and I love that part of photography, that in a way or another we have frames. It's not like watching a movie. Watching a movie sometimes is just for the most of the time is a storyline and is a continuous, and then we have many details, many point of view, conversation, music, and so on. But watching photography is diving deep inside of feeling that are not ours sometimes, and trying to understand what that person felt in the moment to shoot that picture. I think this is the most interesting part in photography. Nowadays, it's usual to connect to photography as a certain way to, most of the time, just capture the beauty. But I think there is much more than just talking about beauty or aesthetics. Photography is a tool that permit us to save, in some ways, some part of our world, of the world we see, or the world of other people, and we freeze that moment. So it's up to us to understand, also after years, why we went to take this picture, what we wanted to say, what guided us to instinctively push a button. And as I said in many podcasts, I think photography is actualized in the moment we select the picture, because we have a certain way to click the button many times, because we click the button in the moment we choose to click and save this shoot. But if we talk about analog photography, but also in digital photography, sometimes we don't catch the moment in the way we wanted, and sometimes it's about the light, it's about exposure, sometimes it's about the film is expired, and so on. And in our mind, we construct an idea of the photography we was thinking to capture. And then after that, there is the part of the selection. So then we are going to select on our film or our archive the picture in a way or another touch more us. And what I learned in my experience, especially reserving a picture from years in my archive, to go watch again this picture, understand what really was driving me to take some footage, and especially in the years that accumulated many different influences, or I learned more about what I want to communicate today. I can choose the picture in a different way. So the puzzle is composed in a totally different way. So then we have the first shoot, and then we have the second shoot, because we click again in the moment we select this picture, and then we are going to work on this picture, and then we are going to publish this picture. And where we are going to publish this picture? Well, we will use the picture inside of a book, or we will use the picture as a frame printed. We will just print a postcard. We will put on social media. Where we put on social media, how we compose our feed, how we compose our video or slideshow, or so on. And all of this step, in a way or another, they are like to remarkable every time they click, and so then making more sure ourselves about what we want to communicate. And we do it all of this step really unconsciously, and most of the time we arrive at from ideas that we structure inside of our mind, that in a way or another are totally influenced from what is not only our perception of the world, but also about what is the perception of other people that we follow. That's in a way or another, as we know, we are a fruit of what we eat, what we see, what we read, what we listen, and all of these unconsciously influences right us to understand sometimes and not understand in other ways. So we have always two sides: understanding a picture, not understanding a picture. And this is the deal in photography, I think. The deal is that in a way or another we have to accept our not capacities and our capacities to understand a frame. To go to this point, to the next podcast that I think is the one more influenced me, not in a way to perceive the world or perceive the photography, but to perceive my way to work in this field of podcasts. It was the podcast and the talk with Craig Mammano that I think is not only a great photographer, but I think is also a great person. I love it to talk with him. We talked probably 1 hour and a half, and after this 1 hour and a half we talked probably also another hour by ourselves. And I love the way he worked on in photography, because it's a totally authorial project going on and on and on and on. And the way he worked in photography sometimes can be perceived as maniacal, but I think is totally full of passion, full of love. You can listen. There are 4 parts of this podcast, so 1 hour podcast totally. And what I will advise is to put always, when you listen at the podcast, the picture of these people in front of you. Listen what they have to say, what they say during our talk, and understanding them, helping yourself watching the picture.
Yeah, so he really led me on my way. I lost track a little bit. Sorry. Where I was at there, but just being passionate about the work you're doing, and that's the thing, the photography that attracts me most time, just the same as the photographer lining up with the work. I think that's a part of that. They are following that passion.
And your picture talk totally about that. I mean, during your talking, I'm watching also your feed on Instagram without stopping. It's really interesting. I mean, I would suggest that to the people to listen to this podcast and watching the feed slowly during your talking, because it's really amazing. It's like I'm watching a documentary, live documentary,
And the last podcast I want to talk about that I think is also a really nice, funny podcast is the one with Loreal Prystaj that touched me in some ways, and I think Loreal, she's a really great person. I love to talk with her. I love the way she work on her photography. I love the way she's open to get new ideas, to get new point of view, and I hope in some ways to continue to have this podcast with these people I mentioned before, because I feel like we can groove together, and this was the intention of the podcast, sharing information to other people, and that's what I learned is the part amazing of my work is when we listen at someone else saying, talking about something, talking about an experience, we can figure out some experience we did probably, but unconsciously we were not aware about.
I that is that's a great question. How would I portray it? And instead of, I'd maybe want to switch those words, instead of wondering how would I portray it, because portrayal means you're presenting a portrayal of something. But how would I just capture our everyday or a moment, or how you're even asking in the beginning, like the intimacy or something. This is something I must think about. But it's so funny you're asking all these questions, because I was recently, reflecting on my photographing myself in these certain constructs. And when I say constructs, I'm talking like, let's start from the bathtub. Let's move to like, I did things in my house where I was like disrupting things, of making myself into a lampshade. I'm not sure if you saw that. Where like, no pun intended, but not pun, but my cat is looking in the camera.
And so we start to create some kind of awareness about what we was thinking and what we are going to think. And in many ways, for example, when I talk with these people, I always have certain of ideas about productivity and a new way to approach the photography. And I have this kind of detailed ideas of how these people will fit a lot inside of some topics. During the podcast you can listen that sometimes we talk about some kind of project or challenge I give to them that probably, I mean, until now no one sent me anything, but the point is the challenge is not kind of I want to see your work or I want to see what you produce, but I want more in a way or another give to you some influences to even better understand who you are, what you do, which is your way to get in touch with the world. Sometimes I think, and this is what I would love to have, I would love to have always people that push me in some ways to, because they feel like, like, I don't know, they feel like I'm good and I'm fitting with some topic, and they say, hey, probably you fit in this field, have you ever tried? And most of the time when if happen something like that and I didn't try that field they are advising me, for me is kind of a kick to start something new, to explore a new world, to explore something is out of myself. And that's I think the reasonable point of this podcast: learning new experience and trying in some ways to research in these experiences and finding our point of view, our real point of view. Because photography, I think, is, as I said, is just a tool to connect. It's a tool for sure to connect with other people, it's a tool to connect with ourselves, it's a tool to connect with the society, it's a tool to connect with the world, with the animal, and so on. What I would for sure say is photography, in my point of view, is not something we have to categorize in different style or different commercial department, but more a tool that we have to understand that is nowadays in the hand of everyone, because everyone has a phone, and it's a tool that permits us to communicate in a better way. Because as we know, and I hope that everyone knows, that our way to communicate is totally based on images. There are no people, they don't use images. In a way or another, even also people are blind, they use some certain images, because when they touch something, they can perceive the shapes and the details of these objects, or the character, and they can install inside of their mind an images of what is related to a word. Every word we use is related to sign, and these sign are images. So I think photography has to create this revolution inside, going out from the structure we are used to know, and understanding that the world of photography is much more wider than what we think. If we just destructure our way to perceive what was structured from someone else. So I hope you like this video, and I hope I created some certain way to perceive the world in a different way. I don't know. I hope that I pushed you to see the world in a different way, to go out and taking different picture, to change the rules inside of your game. And if you like this video, I hope you can put a like and subscribe to the channel, or even share this video to someone else that you think will be interested to know more about photography, and not only. And for who want to learn more about not only photography but many different creative skills, this video is sponsored by Skillshare. There is a link in bio, you can click and you can get 3 months on Skillshare. That from my advice is a totally interesting platform where I learned a lot of things, and usually there are many different tutorials that we can check on YouTube, but most of the time we search something from A to Z, and we find a video of one, a video of another, a video of another. And what I really like of Skillshare, that you have basic lesson, advanced lesson, pro lesson. Most of the times they are not really longer, and what I would advise for sure, if you want to learn something new, you can follow some Skillshare classes with your 3 months, and then you can decide to keep on or not. What I learned in Skillshare was podcasting secret, grow your podcast audience, how to get sponsorship and brand deal for your podcast, stand out on Society 6, a roadmap creating art that sell, how to start a YouTube channel in 2022, and writing funny for internet, that are just a part of many courses that I followed the last year, and I'm still following some of them. And I think you can learn a lot of things that make you groove. So thank you for watching this video, and see you in the next one.